We took a very brief look at the matrix earlier, so let's take a more in-depth view now. The matrix provides a non-linear way to play clips that can be recorded in real time to preserve a performance. It consists of cells into which we can load clips, either dragging them in from the browser, the track view, or by right-clicking on a cell and using the import menu choice. While it's very versatile, there are a few rules. Only one type of data can be used in one row, either MIDI or audio, although both types can exist in the same column. There must be a corresponding track of that type in the track view for each matrix row used. If one doesn't exist, one will be created. Multiple rows can be assigned to a single track. The row header has controls to mute and solo the row, as well as a row selector. A MIDI track also has a direct button. By default, a MIDI row routes through the track, allowing processing to be applied, such as MIDI effects, volume control, etc. In direct mode, the track is bypassed and routing is direct to the synth. To play a MIDI track, you'll either need a hardware synth attached to your system or a soft synth inserted in the project. We saw how to do that earlier. Once the matrix has a few clips in the cells, they can be played back or stopped as required. But again, there are rules. Let's take a look at the controls and what they do. Along the top are controls that relate to the matrix globally. The first stops all cells from playing back should things get out of control. Next is the Record Performance button. We'll use that shortly. The Follow Transport button, when lit, will stop all cells from playing back unless the transport's rolling, so cells can be queued to start on playback or recording start. We'll use this later when we record a performance. The next drop-down sets the trigger resolution. That means when you start or trigger a cell, it won't actually start playback until its resolution point is reached. This will help to keep time between the various clips as they are triggered. Change this as required and choose from the usual musical intervals or immediate for instant playback. The next buttons are all global controls for cell behavior. When the loop button is linked, a cell will play back continuously until specifically stopped. If it is off, the cell plays back once and then stops. The latch mode controls what happens to the clip when you release the mouse button or MIDI trigger. If this is lit, latch mode is enabled and the cell will continue to play back when the trigger is released. If it's off, playback stops as soon as you release the mouse or button. Re-trigger mode controls what happens when a playing cell is triggered again. If enabled, a playing cell will start to play back from the beginning. If disabled, the cell will stop. Cell Start controls where the cell starts to play from when it's triggered. When lit, the cell will always start to play back from the beginning. When it's off, the cell will sync with the now time. Over to the right is the MIDI control. Click and hold to choose the channel that the matrix should respond to. Left click to turn on or off whether the matrix responds to incoming MIDI signals or not. You need to turn this on if you want to use a MIDI controller as a cell trigger. The Options button opens the Options dialog. Now let's take a closer look at a cell. To start playback, click on it, and if the controls are at the default settings, click on it again to stop it. A cell will follow the default settings we've just looked at unless changed. Right-click over a filled cell to reveal a context menu. From here, a cell can be renamed, cleared, a new clip imported, MIDI learner controller to it, set as a one-shot cell, and also change the trigger resolution. If you change a cell's trigger resolution from the default, it is displayed in the cell. Change it back to global using that menu choice. The two buttons in the bottom right corner are the cell's loop and latch mode buttons. When backlit blue, they are following the global settings that we've just looked at, but they each have two other states. Click on them once, and the state changes to the opposite of the current global setting. This is indicated by the button graphic. Click on it again, and it now switches to the opposite state. This is currently the same as the global setting, but the cell is still not following the global state. For example, if the cell's loop setting is loop and I change the global setting to one shot, the cell will remain on loop. To set them back to follow the global settings, Control-click on the button. Now let's take a quick look at how the cells play back and the rules they follow. Click on a cell to start playback. Click on another cell in the same column and it will flash to indicate that it is queued, waiting to play back when its resolution start point is reached. They will both play back together. As many cells as you want can play back at the same time. But only one cell in each row can be played back at any one time. Click on another cell in the same row and that too starts to flash as it's queued for playback. But when this one starts to play, the other cell in the row will stop playing. A whole column can be played back by clicking on the column header. Other cells can be added, but the one cell per row rule is still followed. Starting another column will also stop any cells in the other column if the column has cells in corresponding rows. There's also a context menu for the columns where they can be renamed, inserted, duplicated, or assigned to a MIDI controller via MIDI Learn. As I mentioned earlier, it's also possible to record the actions performed in the matrix as a performance that can then be treated in the same way as any other project. To do that, click on the Record Performance button, and if you want to start the cells when recording starts, click on the Follow Transport button. Now all we need to do is click on the first cell or column that we want to hear so that they are queued ready to go. To start recording, just click on the Transport Play button. There's no need to arm each track to record. Any track that is used in the performance will automatically record its part. Once recording is finished, the performance is there, ready to be played back or edited. That's the Matrix, a great tool for testing out ideas or just as a source of inspiration.